Hi. This was originally supposed to be a live recording from my January 24th mentor info session for the open source research experience. However, the recording of that got messed up somehow. And so I'm just going to re-record it with no audience and trying to remember some of the questions that I got from those who were joining the call and talk through some of those questions. Again, this is for the mentors, people interested in mentoring for the open source research experience program this coming summer. I will have separate kind of info sessions for folks who may be interested in being contributors once we know our status with regards to Google Summer of Code. But I'm also going to be holding regular office hours at 10 o'clock on every Friday, 10 o'clock Pacific time every Friday for mentors until February 18th, I think was the last one. And you can reach out to me when you if you have questions on that. And it's the same Zoom link that from the one that I sent out for this January 24th event. So uh, feel free to send me questions on anything that comes up in this session that you don't understand or that is unclear. And hopefully see many of you posting your project ideas for this coming year's OSRE. Now, just as a quick general overview for those of you who may be new to this program, the open source research experience is a scalable exchange for project ideas, and the project ideas are kind of small, uh, discrete projects that a student can do in, say, 10 to 12 weeks, so over the summer, to help the mentor uh, forward their either their research or their open source project, depending on whether we're dealing with a GSOC like project or a Google Summer of Code like project or the Summer of Reproducibility. And I'll talk about the distinctions on that in a second. And the whole idea behind this is really to jumpstart contributor communities or and your for those in reproducibility, kind of your project and research community, and really to help students work with scientists and gain really marketable and important skills. And what we're really excited about is that we're able, because of our collaborate or our number of years of working with Google Summer of Code and other larger global programs, we do have level of recognition. So we do get students from all over the world reaching out to us to be to work with our mentors. So that's kind of that's an exciting part of our program. Um, just again as background, we built this based on our experience working with Google Summer of Code, which started in 2018. And we found that that particular program was really exciting in the way that it can bring students in from all over the world, like I was saying, and we were able to work with them. They weren't necessarily local students. This is all, of course, in a remote, 100% remote, even back pre-COVID. Um, and we were actually found that their students were coming that we otherwise might have missed, like very jewels in the rough, like hidden jewels is what we would call them. They're people that we wouldn't necessarily have found otherwise, but they were attracted to the program, and we were able to make good connections between our mentors and really, really talented students. And there was definitely observable benefits to the mentors. For them, they saw an increase in their communities and the diversity within their community, bringing in new contributors. The students, of course, gained really important skills, and the communities kind of their broadened their base and allowed for much more sustainable communities. We were really excited. We were able to work with Google Summer of Code for a number of years, but in 2020, in part because of the pandemic and what we saw is just more of a need to try and support more students working with more mentors, we broadened our approach to expand our ability to kind of match mentors and students by allowing for more sponsors for our program. And that's when we went from just being Google Summer of Code mentor organization to creating the open source research experience program as a larger kind of umbrella program that we participate in GSOC under as part of our GSOC participation. That's where the OSRE connects there, but also other sponsors come in. So we can actually like bring in other like industry sponsors or foundation sponsors who are able to support students and mentors working together. And also allowed us a kind of different types of contributions. GSOC sometimes, like it's somewhat limited to certain types of projects, but we were allowed to expand outside of that and do documentation or other ones that wouldn't necessarily be something that GSOC would see as as an appropriate project, but ones that we still think are important for open source projects. And we could actually have students stay longer, depending on the needs of the mentor. And we also, in the case of local students local to UC Santa Cruz, under GSAC, we are not able to use our local students, but being able to expand it to OSRE allowed us to find other funding to support students who are in our own campus. One of the big programs that we have outside of GSOC within the open source research experience is the Summer of Reproducibility. And it really is those two programs are probably the two major ones, the being accepted as a mentor organization for GSOC yearly, hopefully every year. But not never guaranteed, but we have had a pretty good success rate. But then also the NSF funded Summer of Reproducibility, which is under our Repeto collaborative effort with the University of Chicago and NYU called Repeto. And but summer reproducibility is very much similar, very structured very much similarly to Google Summer of Code, but it focuses obviously on reproducibility. So creating, producing and using reproducibility artifacts and kind of highlighting importance of practical reproducibility and giving contributors, so the students who are working with mentors, the ability to acquire valuable skills related to reproducibility. And so that was an exciting one that started in 2023. And so this will be our third year having the SOR program under the OSRE. Now for last year's program, we had an increase. Every year we seem to have more and more students and mentors working with us. It's been very exciting growth over the last, particularly since 2021. So last year we had 40 mentors working both either through GSOC or through Summer of Reproducibility, and a few that were kind of more other independent sponsors. And our mentors can be really any, we have a pretty wide range of the types of sponsors. Most are faculty, researchers, or PhD students. And we also are really excited in 2023 to have two of our, 2024 to have two of our 2023 students, contributors, actually be mentors. That was very exciting. But we also have industry partners who are working with faculty or from different universities, working to support and be co-mentors. So as long as there's affiliations are there, and I'm happy to answer individual questions and with particular cases, we are pretty happy to bring in mentors from all different sectors. So and I think it's really useful for students to interact with all of those different folks. This year we had a lot of proposals, the 100 proposals, and we were able to, of them, we ranked strong, like 50 of those were actually ranked as strong, which is a pretty high number, I think, for, from that large of a group. And it kind of gives you an idea of the quality of the types of students that are interested. From those that were ranked as being acceptable projects, we were able based on the available funding, able to support 40 students of that group. And we had kind of an even split this year between Summer of Reproducibility and GSOC. And that was kind of exciting. And so the student blogs, in case you're interested in the type of work that students are doing, are right there with that QR code. It goes to the 2024 student blogs. Most of them have all of their they each have 3 reports that they're supposed to do, and almost all of them have it. There are a few that are final reports I'm still following up with, but really all of them are there, and it gives you a good idea of the work that they've done. And the 2020, there's also, of course, the blog from the years prior to that you can look at, but the most recent ones are under that QR code. Some frequently asked questions about this program. First off, who can be a mentor? And that's important for those of you who are on this call. Really, there are 2 types most of the time. I mean, I should say, like, generally there are 2 types of people who can mentor, and it kind of depends on the type of project you have. Again, we have the Google Summer of Code, which is really focusing on building open source communities and bringing in more contributors to open source. And then, of course, the Summer of Reproducibility, which is a similar idea, but focusing on reproducibility artifacts. So if you are a researcher, faculty or maintainer from a UC affiliated open source project, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a faculty, a specific, like a UC staff member or faculty, but you and your co-mentor should be affiliated with the UC project. We typically expect there to be at least one UC affiliated maintainer involved, but I can also talk a little bit more about that. If people have specific questions, they can always reach out to me. And of course, for reproducibility, we're a little bit more open. We're looking really for any researcher, faculty, maintainer, faculty, researcher, graduate student that's looking to support open source production or use of reproducibility artifacts. So a much wider range of folks. For what we provide here at UCSC, like why do it with us and not go find your own students? Well, one, we make sure that your student gets their stipends, and we take care of all the administration for that. In the case of GSOC, actually all of the stipends go through GSOC. So, but we help kind of facilitate the administration of the GSOC, the mentor organization side of it. So definitely larger projects may be able to feel that they themselves want to go and try to be mentor organizations for under GSOC, which I think if you get to a certain size, that makes sense. But for most projects that we work with, they just don't have the resources to actually have someone who would be an org admin like the way I work, the job I do under this program. So it just really helps, and you don't have to do all the legwork and paperwork to get into the GSOC. And then for Summer Reproducibly, obviously we are the lead mentor organization. We're the lead administrator for it, and it's generally just a really good way that you don't have to do any of the admin, any of the overhead work. It's really all of us, and you as a mentor just to get to focus on doing the work and working with your student. We do, for the question of how many students can a mentor have, we do allow mentors to have more than 1 student, but we do like to have co-mentors in those type of situations. And in general, even if it's you and just 1 student, we like to have a fallback mentor for students to go to. A lot of times what we end up having is maybe a mentor team. So we'll maybe have a number of students who are working with a number of mentors, and they kind of create their own cohort. Now, that's actually a really effective model for those of you who might be interested and have the ability to have multiple mentors working with you. But I'm happy to talk further about that with you if you have any questions. For GSOC related projects, we typically like to always have a mentor and a co-mentor. That's GSOC looks at that as being important as well. And we understand that we don't want students to feel left out. If something happens to their mentor, they need to have somebody with technical expertise, not just the org admin, to reach out to. And we find that important. So it's always good to have yourself and a co-mentor, no matter how many students you have. For start and end dates, like I said, projects typically run between 10 and 12 weeks. Those are I think 12 weeks is like kind of the default. GSOC allows a lot of flexibility. The Summer Reproducibility reproducibility. Oh my gosh, can't talk say the word. The summer reproducibility also allows a lot of flexibility. But I do make sure that it's something that I would find reasonable. Like I don't really want projects going past, let's say November. I've got to move on to the next year. And also it has to be something which both the mentor and the student agree upon. This is not a situation where um, uh, the mentor gets to make the decision or the student gets to make the decision. It has to be a consensus between both parties that the dates are agreeable. Uh, and I will only change it when I see that both parties have said yes, this is the change that we both agreed to. A question about whether one question I get is whether graduate students can be part of this or it's just undergraduates only. I do want to highlight that this really was created as an undergraduate focused program, both GSOC and although it's opened its criteria, I mean, opened up the criteria a bit more and a bit wider, eligibility a bit wider. And similarly, the summer reproducibility and OSRE in general does have more of an undergraduate focus. However, some project may require a higher level of skill. And so we have allowed graduate students to be eligible for a summer reproducibility projects. But I do caution those who are doing Google Summer of Code that unlike summer reproducibility, where we have an ability to adjust our stipends based on a graduate student versus undergraduate, so based on expertise and education. GSOC has nothing like that. It does not adjust for that. There's a single stipend and single type of stipend based on where you're at, based on your locality when you're in the program, and they don't distinguish between undergraduates and graduate students. So it's something to really be aware of if you're doing if you have a GSOC focused type program versus one that's focusing on reproducibility. Now, our international students allowed, this is the great thing about this program, is we can pretty much support a stipend for any student, including those who live outside the US or international students who are inside the US, as long as they're willing to use their OPT or CPT. There are very few exceptions to this, and I think they've at this point never come up. But there probably would be, and if you had questions specifically about your situation or a student you're working with, please reach out. But generally, the answer is yes, we can work with pretty much any student anywhere in the world. So to highlight a little bit more about the graduate students with regards to the summer reproducibility, and this is a bit of a change from last year. And in part, it's kind of a recognition that a lot of the times graduate students who have been working with us aren't necessarily doing 100% of their summer on their particular summer reproducibility project. And for fairness sake, and just to kind of recognize the needs for us to support the work that's being done specifically under the project that is highlighted under summer reproducibility, we have kind of two different projects, or sorry, routes now for graduate students to work with us this summer. And so the first one is basically students, the assumption being that students will work on this, the project that they're putting in for under their mentor, but they're also likely also working on separate research for their own dissertation or thesis. So that's a 50% FTE for the summer. But we will take on a case-by-case basis, we will allow for exceptions to this, which would increase the FTE if the mentor is saying, no, this particular project for the summer really requires a full-time effort. So a reminder that full-time efforts equal typically about 350 hours. Part-time effort is of course 175, so half of that. And those are the two kind of types of projects we have. We either have a full-time or a part-time. If a mentor says, no, I actually need a graduate student, I need a PhD student, and I need that student to be working with me for 350 hours or ish over the summer, we will take that into consideration. So this isn't a hard rule. This is kind of our default for graduate students research fellowships will be the 50%. However, um, we do want to allow for the instances, and I know there were definitely some last year where students were working the full 100% over the summer. So this is just kind of like to allow that we have to have it. There has to be some justification, I guess is the best way to put it. So please, so as a mentor, it'd be great to justify and give us specific details. And then we can assess those and make a decision based on that. And again, there's a lot of this again is for us to make sure that we can reach as many students as possible and as many mentors as possible this coming summer. The other option, of course, is for the graduate mentor fellowships, and the idea would be that, and this actually came about when we noticed that there are students who were doing some work, but also mentoring their undergraduates. And in that kind of situation, I feel like we felt that there should be some um, compensation for the work they were doing as mentors. So the other option, without any like having to deal with exceptions to FTE levels, would be to have a 75% FTE for the summer, which would include them doing their specific SOR project as well as mentoring undergraduates and doing some other program related responsibilities related to maybe not meant undergraduates specifically they're working with, but projects and skill building activities that would support mentor other SOR students from other projects. And again, I am noting here that GSOC does not differentiate between undergraduate and graduates. So pay rates for those students, if it's a GSOC project versus a summer reproducibility project, this is solely based on the residency and not the education level. So just keep that in mind when you're considering when students are considering projects or working with you, if you are looking at a kind of a GSOC specific type of project. All right, and I'm sure I'll get questions about that, and I'm happy to answer independent questions when through via email or during my office hours. Now, again, so the big thing about mentors and what we're kind of pushing for over the next month, or actually 3 weeks, preferably by February 11th, is for mentors who are interested in having students contributing to their projects and working with them over the summer to get up their project ideas. And the project is really just a snapshot of the effort that needs to be made by a student to fix whatever issue it is that you have that you are wanting a student to work on with you over the summer. So again, these are project ideas. And so the student looks at it and then they create the proposal for how to fix the issue. And you can give as much detail as you think you need. There are plenty of project ideas up on our website that you can see as examples. There are some specific and this link here to, oops, I realized I had the instructions for OSRE 2024 listed on there. There is a 2025 instruction, but they're very similar. And they just have, 24, 5 and not 24 on it. So you can check the older ones out. There are specific kind of fields that we ask for. This like topics, skills, difficulty, the size of the project. And again, it's large is 350 hours and some medium is 175, and those were the only two that we opt for. And then you want to have information about who the mentors are, for the students to reach out to, and then just some general ideas and maybe some specific tasks that you would expect. And again, that's what the students will then base writing their projects on, their project proposals on. And you can have more than one project idea. So you don't have to like focus on just one. If maybe you want to prioritize in your, which ones you find are most important, but having multiple ones is actually helpful because you can see what type of students you are you are attracting and what areas are the most interesting to them. So this, I realized I didn't update this one slide. This is specifically for reproducibility, to add reproducibility and other appropriate tags. So if you are a summer reproducibility focused mentor, you would want to add the reproducibility tag. If you are a UC affiliated mentor, there is actually a tag for UC, and that helps kind of help us um, filter for ones that are focused more on maybe a GSOC pathway, but also what other appropriate tags, be it, you know, yeah, AI or ML or hardware or what, there's a number of different tags and you'll see the ones and you can use, and you have some flexibility on the type of tags you can use and create. So, and they're really helpful for students when they're looking for things that are interesting to them. And like I said, the project ideas really need to prefer to be up by February 11th. And this is based on the Google Summer of Code deadline with regards to applications for mentor organizations. The more projects we have up by then, the more likely we are to get be a mentor organization in 2025. And though we do accept project ideas up until about February 18th. After that, we prefer people not to. You can adjust project ideas that you have. You can, edit or add stuff to it. But by the 18th, we really want to have set all of the projects that people are particularly interested in because, or that, the mentors actually want worked on because it gives students time to really review and settle on what they want and move forward. And then, and so that's a timeline. The really pushing for the February 11th deadline is kind of our critical to us at this point. Let me see. So the student proposals. So the great thing about this project is, or that this program is how iterative this process is, which is one of the reasons I think that there's been, generally speaking, a lot of success for students and mentors because you know who you're working with before all the work really starts. And that's in large part due to the back and forth that I think mentors have in, say, the March, April timeframe. And that is, I really do credit for, like I said, the level, we have like a 95% success rate. I mean, very, very high success rate for all of the years that we've been doing this. And a lot of it is because the students know know their mentors, the mentors know the students prior to everything getting started. And you have a chance to kind of make sure you're going to feel really confident that this person can do what they said they're supposed to do over the summer. So starting once the mentor organization's announcement happens in GSOC, we kind of allow students to start reaching out to mentors. We suggest to them not to reach out to you before that point, but some will inevitably will. But so as you start to see students reaching out to you, you will start to be able to identify maybe ones that you think have the right skill levels or the right understanding of the topic area that you're working with. And then they will start writing and focusing on their proposals and getting feedback from you while they're writing proposals. And this, you could have a good number of students that you're working with, but it's in a pretty short period of time. So it is a lot of, it's somewhat intense in that period for the mentors, but the payback in the summer is pretty significant with being able to find students who are actually really, really good fits. We have our criteria is pretty much the biggest and most important part for mentors to consider is whether the work that is being proposed by the student is actually really going to benefit you and the work that you're doing. And that's kind of one of the critical aspects of our of this program in general and GSOC and all of these efforts is that it's supposed to be a win-win. It's supposed to be something where the mentor's actually getting a good, solid work that's actually promoting and pushing forward their efforts in the long term. So this isn't something where you should see it as a burden to you. It may be some extra work, but the idea is that you feel like it was worth it at the end. So that's one of the main criteria. That is probably like critical criteria for mentors to consider. Is this going to actually help me? Is this work actually going to help me? And this particular student going to be able to deliver on it? And that delivery is also really important. Make sure that your timelines and deliverables are attainable. And those are, see that. So those top two are very important, I think, for when you're considering which students to work with, but also building and maintaining a diverse community. And I find this in particular for the open source projects that we work with, that making sure that you have a diverse community of contributors is very important to long-term sustainability in open source projects. And we highlight is that it's also a very important one to look at. And then in the end, so once you get the proposals from students, and they have an April 8th deadline, I think this year, you will then rate the student proposals and select the people that you want to work with. So I think that that's also a critical aspect of this program, is that you, as the mentor, get to select who you want to work with. I do not in any way impose anyone upon you, nor does any other part of our program. It is really you making that call. Now, this is a quick overview of what the process looks like, what I've talked about in case I missed anything. You post your projects, your project ideas. Potential students review the projects. They're really interesting. Students reach out to the mentors, and this would happen like in late February, early March. Students with mentor input create the proposals, and then mentors review and rate the proposals. Administrators, basically me, determine the number of funded slots. That's based on a number of issues, and I like to be very transparent about it. So as we get closer to that, I will have more details on that. And then we assign the slots to rated proposals, and then the summer work begins. The actual dates on that are coming in the next slide. Again, right now we're in the projects should get posted period. And then we're going to move in from there once we find out whether or not we are a GSOC mentor organization. So keep in mind, the GSOC mentor organization is something we have to apply for every year. And we've had pretty good luck, but you can never guarantee it. Now, the Summer of Reproducibility is our project. We're the project managers of that program, so that one's all guaranteed for this summer. But Google Summer of Code is something that we will know whether we're part of at the end of February. So once that announcement gets made, that's when students really should start reaching out. So fellows is another term we use for our students. Fellows, sometimes fellow students, contributors, start working on the proposals under your guidance. And then they have a April 8th proposal deadline. And then over the month after that, until May 8th, there's discussion back and forth from mentors and organizers, and you give me your input and your reviews, and then I create the slots based on those reviews. And then there's an announcement on May 8th for both Summer Reproducibility and GSOC. And I can go into more detail about that if people have questions separately, but it is actually a very weird parallel day where some students because I like to use the Google Summer of Code platform for all students, even if some end up being Summer Reproducibility students. So sometimes students will get a negative response from Google Summer of Code and then turn around and get a positive response from me. So I try and warn students who have reproducibility related projects that could happen. So don't be freaked out yet if you see something from GSOC. But mainly because GSOC has very strict rules about telling students who applied through GSOC whether or not they got their slot prior to GSOC officially telling them, because there are some compliance related issues that GSOC has to do before they send out any notices. So they're very strict on them being the first person to tell a student one way or the other. So I tried to respect that, and it can cause a little confusion on our part, but all in all, it lasts for a very short time, and then everything is kind of back to normal by May 9th. So once the announcement's been made, we have about a month of what's called an onboarding period, or GSOC calls it a bonding period, where you start working with your mentor to get them socialized, but not actually doing the work yet, but socializing them with the people that they're going to be working with over the summer. Any of the other issues, trying to understand any communications methodologies that you prefer. How do you want to communicate? How often? All of those questions happen during that period. Our earliest start date this year is June 1st for GSOC projects. For summer reproducibility, I have the ability to have that start earlier if it's needed. Just that can be part of the discussion that you have with your student and during that bonding period. Then projects start working over June, July, and August, with most projects wrapping up in late August, early to mid-September, although we have had ones that have gone longer. And we try to do some sort of public reporting and presentation of the projects in October, November timeframe. All right. Lastly, wrapping up soon, we have what is the difference? I've talked about all of these different acronyms and all of these different programs. So I want to make sure it's clear. So what's the difference if a student is a Summer of Reproducibility student versus a Google Summer of Code student or any other of our OSRE sponsored projects? Really, for the student application process review, it's really not a huge difference. For all of the undergraduate students, I will ask them to go through the GSOC portal. And so then I can assess whether or not I feel like they're GSOC eligible students, or maybe they're strictly summer reproducibility students. So that's why some summer reproducibility students will end up going through the GSOC portal. But from the student's perspective, the evaluation process is similar. The proposal process is the same and the evaluation process is similar. So the evaluations get done for GSOC students on the GSOC portal, and for summer reproducibility students and other non-GSOC students on a separate OSRE portal. That's basically a Google form-based evaluation process. They're all basically managed under OSRE, so I try to treat them all equally, and the decision on which one you end up in as a student really is made on a couple criteria. Obviously, a lot of the reproducibility ones that don't have kind of a University of California connection end up being under summer reproducibility by virtue of the topic and the issue not fitting GSOC as well. And then whether US-based versus international. Earlier, that was something where I preferred to have those who are outside, like international students, so non-US based students kind of working through GSOC because their setup is really good for working with people in any country. But we've actually, within UCSC has been able to work that out pretty well too. So that's less of a criteria for me. And now I make it more about the topic areas and the mentor affiliations. Now, if the student is already working with the mentor, which we do allow under summer reproducibility or at the same university, again, as we do allow under summer reproducibility, that is not allowed under GSOC. So those students have to be under something not GSOC. So that's another decision point for us with how a student is placed, a selected student would be placed. All right, so wrapping up briefly, just some features to keep in mind and places where questions often come up. So a reminder that all students get paid to work on your project through any of the OSRE, any of the OSRE related programs. We generally for undergraduates, use the Google Summer of Code Google Summer of Code established rates. Those are based on purchasing power parity that they create every year, and assess based on where a student is residing when they're doing the project. So a US-based student will get, even if they're an international student, will get US-based rate. But if a student is based in China, working in China or India or where you name it, any of the other countries that are on that list, they will get a different rate. And so we use those rates just to make it fair and equitable for the whole program. So we're not like trying to compete with or have any kind of competition with, let's say, with programs like GSOC. So so stipends vary based on student place of residence, but it is based on, um, cost of living in the areas that they are at. Again, flexible start and end dates. Although we typically start in June and end in late August, we have flexibility on that. And keep in mind when you're creating project ideas that the targets are 350 hours or 175 hours for a project. So that's the full-time or part-time. And so when you're creating a project, kind of the project idea is to keep them in that kind of amount of work for a student. And then the student needs to think about that when they're writing their um, project project proposal. So a mentor should indicate on their project ideas whether they consider it to be a full-time project or 350 hours or a part-time project, 175 hours. So you of course only work with students you've chosen, and it's important to note that ideally what your plan is that you're only working with the student 3 to 5 hours a week. And it could be 3 to 5 hours a week from the mentor team. So it's not just one, if it's not just one mentor, say it's you have two mentors, it would mean that you and other mentors shouldn't be working more than 2 and a half hours a week for each of you for a student. So that's the idea. Again, this is again going back to the idea that this is supposed to be helpful for you and not seen as a burden. And that's one of the main um, what ways of measuring that. If you're working more than 3 to 5 hours a week with your students, maybe that's fine for you. Maybe you're getting a lot out of it, but it also may be a flag that the work the student's doing maybe either needs to be adjusted or consider lowering the expectations, and so also to lower your burden. But again, we leave that up to the mentors in the end to decide, but it's something to think about. Projects are, like I said, really supposed to be impacting your research or your open source project. And we're looking to bring new and excited community members to your projects. And our really, real focus is having both student and mentor see the summer as successful. And we're pushing this year in particular is to really get more reporting out from our students and our mentors on their work and what their projects kind of have led to, and focusing on that on our website. And I'll probably have more about that later. All right. Well, I can't take questions because I did this not live. But if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to me. And you should have my email. It's slieggi@ucsc.edu. Also, if you're in the Slack channel, you can always reach out to me there. But again, we'll be on Fridays at 10 o'clock. I will again have office hours, and let me know and I'll leave some notes in the the um, the YouTube info session for this video about how to get that information as well. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and let me know if you have questions.